Story 1. I was the last person to leave the mall that night. Most of the lights inside had already gone dark, and silence echoed through the vast, empty halls. But it wasn't the inside of the mall that unnerved me. It was the parking lot. You know that strange feeling when space is too silent, too open, and you feel like something is watching you even though you can't prove it? That's exactly what gripped me as I walked out with my shopping bags clutched tight against my chest. The lot was nearly empty. Only a few cars scattered like forgotten toys under dim orange lamps that buzzed like tired insects. Mine was parked near the far corner, and every step toward it seemed louder than it should have been. That's when I heard it, breathing. It was faint at first, almost hidden in the hum of the overhead lights. But as I walked closer to my car, the sound grew clearer, measured, slow, and distinctly human. My heart raced. I stopped, scanned the shadows, and even turned back to see if anyone else was walking behind me. Nothing. Just the long stretch of pavement and the wide-open silence. I forced a nervous laugh at myself. You're just tired. Hearing things. It's fine. Just get to your car. But when I was finally standing by the driver's door, the sound was unmistakable. Ragged breathing, coming from inside. For a full 10 seconds I stood frozen, too afraid to look, but too terrified to move. My gaze finally shifted toward the driver's side window. With shaking hands, I pulled my phone from my bag and turned on the flashlight. The narrow beam of light cut through the darkness and landed on the glass. Nothing. No shapes. No movement. The seats looked empty. My pulse eased just a little, and I exhaled. Maybe the echo from the garage pipes was playing tricks on me. Maybe... But no. The breathing didn't stop. I swear it started to match the climb of my own fear. Snapping the flashlight off, I convinced myself to just open the door and go home. The longer I stood there, the crazier I felt. Keys in hand, I unlocked the car and pulled the door open. The click of the central lock echoed unnaturally loud, and then another click followed it. Every door around me locked. I whipped my head around, expecting to see someone pressed against the glass. Nothing, just me, standing with the door half open. My legs turned weak, but against every instinct screaming in my body, I slid into the driver's seat. The moment I did, the door snapped shut and locked itself. My keys fell against the floor as if yanked from my trembling hands. The car vibrated. Then it happened. The engine roared to life. I didn't touch the ignition. My keys were lying useless near the pedals, yet the dashboard lit up, and loud, jarring music blasted from the speakers, so deafening I had to cover my ears. The headlights burst on, blazing forward, throwing a sickly glow across the lot. That's when I saw him. A figure, standing just beyond the beam, only a few feet away. My blood turned to ice. His outline was tall and sharp. I couldn't see his face, but he wasn't moving, wasn't advancing, just standing there, staring, or at least I felt him staring. My chest tightened so much I could barely breathe. I tried pulling the handle, but the door wouldn't open. I slammed my fists on the glass, screaming for help, knowing no one would hear me. The music grew louder, thundering in rhythm with my own panic. The figure stepped forward, slow, deliberate. My hands fumbled over every button I could press, slamming at the windows, the lights, the horn. Nothing worked. My phone was gone. I must have dropped it outside. I pressed myself against the driver's side door, as far away from the headlights as possible. That's when I realized something worse, the sound of breathing. It wasn't outside. It was behind me. Every hair on my neck shot up. Slowly, against my will, I turned my head toward the back seat. There was nothing at first, just the shadow of the headrest. But the sound was there, inches from my ear. Heavy, uneven, warm in the cold night air. Then I saw movement. Something shifted in the shadows of the back seat, a hunched shape, as though it had been waiting for me to sit down. I screamed, clawing at the door handle, pounding with all my strength. My legs kicked at the windshield, the music drowning my own cries. The shape leaned closer, and a voice, raspy, broken, whispered words I couldn't understand. And then silence. The headlights went out. The music stopped. The engine died. For a moment, everything was pitch black. I thought maybe I had passed out, but when the lights flickered back on, the figure in the parking lot was gone. So was the presence in the back seat. The locks clicked open. I tumbled out of the car, shaking, breathless, my screams echoing in the night. The entire row of cars looked untouched, silent, as if nothing at all had happened. Except one thing. When I bent to grab my dropped phone on the ground, I froze. The screen was shattered, but the camera was still on, still recording. The video displayed what had been standing behind me the whole time. A pale face, wide empty eyes, grinning directly at the lens. Story 2. You ever feel like a joke has gone too far? Like the laughter dies, but the tension doesn't? That was us that night. The night at the movies when we should have just gone home. It was past midnight when the credits rolled. The theater had emptied quickly, and the four of us, me, Jacob, Sarah, and Emily, were the last ones to leave. The mall doors creaked open to a deserted parking lot, stretching out under buzzing lamps that flickered like they might give out at any second. I remember the air was cold in that way that makes you hug yourself tighter, every sound exaggerated in the silence. And then we saw him. A man in a hoodie, leaning against a concrete pillar not far from where our car was parked. His face was hidden, head lowered, arms crossed, but his stillness made my stomach tighten. He wasn't checking a phone, wasn't smoking, just standing there like a statue carved into the garage. Jacob chuckled nervously, probably waiting for a ride. I wanted to believe him. We all did, but none of us could stop glancing at him as we made our way across the lot. Halfway through, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. He wasn't leaning anymore. He was walking, slow, casual steps, not hurried, but undeniably behind us. I picked up my pace. The others did too, bags rustling, shoes squeaking faintly on the pavement. That's when the sound echoed after us. Soft footsteps, perfectly matched to ours. Every time we sped up, he sped up. When we slowed down, so did he. No words, no shouts, just footsteps. Sarah whispered, almost panicking, "He's following us." We cut to the left between rows of cars. He followed. We zigzagged again, this time faster, nearly running. His footfalls, slow, steady, like he wasn't even concerned, always behind us. Never closer, never further. Just there. By then, my chest was tightening. The lot felt endless, too large, every car looking the same under dim lights. I could feel the adrenaline burning in my body, telling me to run, telling me to scream, but my voice stuck in my throat. Then I saw our car. Relief hit for a split second. Jacob fumbled with the keys, nearly dropping them as he unlocked the doors. We all scrambled in, me and Sarah diving into the back, Emily in the passenger seat, and Jacob slamming himself behind the wheel. The locks clicked. Safety. For a moment, just safety. We all turned, breathing heavy, pressing against the windows to look outside. The parking row was empty. The man was gone. And then Sarah screamed. Not outside the car, inside it. The hooded figure was sitting in the middle seat of the back row, inches away from me. I don't know how he got in. I don't know if he was already there or if he just appeared, but 1 second we were safe, and the next he was staring straight at us. The hood hung low, but I could see his smile, wide, sharp, unnatural. He didn't move, didn't speak, just smiled. I slammed myself against the door, clawing at the handle. It wouldn't open. None of them would open. Jacob cursed, slamming his fists against the wheel, but the car wouldn't even start. The keys turned useless in the ignition. We were trapped. The air inside grew heavy, like it was filling with something invisible that pressed cold fingers against our throats. The figure leaned forward, moving slowly, deliberately, as if he wanted us to know how tight the space was, how little we could do. His face still covered except for that smile stretching too wide. Emily sobbed, whispering, "Please, please, don't hurt us." The man tilted his head slightly like he didn't understand, or didn't care. His grin widened. Then, in one fluid motion, the overhead light of the car flickered on. It illuminated his face just enough to show pale skin and empty eyes, wells of darkness staring without even blinking. Something inside me snapped. I shoved myself forward, punching Jacob's seat, screaming at him to drive. He twisted the key again and again until finally, with a violent roar, the engine caught. Headlights flared across the lot, and the man was gone. Completely gone. No sound of the doors opening, no shape slipping away, no figure in the mirrors. Just gone as if he had dissolved into the air right in front of us. We sat frozen, lungs heaving, hands trembling against the leather seats. There were no words left, just the raw sound of fear clogging the space between us. Finally, Jacob slammed the car into reverse, tires tearing against the pavement. We sped out of the lot like the devil himself was behind us. None of us talked on the drive. None of us looked in the rearview mirror. When Jacob dropped me off, I nearly refused to get out. Every shadow looked like a person waiting. Every silhouette stretched in ways that didn't feel natural. My legs shook so bad I could barely walk. That night, when I finally locked myself in my room, I thought I was safe. But when I turned off the light, the faint sound of footsteps started again. Slow, steady, in perfect sync with mine when I tried to move. And sometimes, when I glance too quickly at the back seat of my car, I swear I still see that smile. Story 3. You ever have one of those nights when you think you're just exhausted and your brain plays tricks on you? That's what I told myself when I left work late and walked into the parking garage that evening. At first, nothing felt wrong. Just another dim, echoing space of concrete pillars and the low buzz of fluorescent lamps. But as the heavy doors shut behind me, I noticed something strange. The garage seemed bigger than before. Longer rows, deeper shadows. I shook it off. Long day, tired eyes. I headed down the row where I knew my car was waiting, row C. I'd parked there 100 times before. Yet as I walked past each car, nothing looked familiar. Not a single license plate, not a single model I recognized. I circled again, then again. Nothing. An uneasy laugh slipped out. You're mixing up the rows. You're fine. But every turn led me back to the same long stretch of vehicles, same empty silence that pressed into my ears. That's when I noticed the staircases. Normally there were two, the north exit and the south. But now, no matter which row I walked down, no staircase was where it should have been. I'd see one at a distance, jog toward it with relief, then turn the corner only for it to vanish. In its place was just more concrete wall. My heart began to pound. I checked my phone. No signal. 0 bars in a garage where I usually had no trouble. My watch ticked louder than it ever had, each second dragging on. I forced myself to walk faster, scanning for any landmark that made sense. But the longer I searched, the stranger it got. Something was wrong with the cars around me now. They looked old, very old. Rust ate through metal like rot on bone. Dust blanketed every windshield so thick it turned the glass gray. Tires sagged flat against the ground as if they had been sitting for decades. I brushed my hand against one trunk and coughed as a puff of dirt smothered my face. I stepped back, realizing not a single car looked remotely new. But I had just parked here. At least, I was sure I had. Then came the worst part. I walked to the nearest vehicle, a cracked, dirt-stained sedan, and wiped at its fogged back window to peer inside. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw them. Faces. Human faces, pressed against the glass from the inside. Eyes wide, mouths frozen mid-scream like they had been trapped for years. Their skin was pale, almost gray, their features twisted and desperate. One of them lifted a trembling hand and pressed it against the glass as if begging me to help. I stumbled back so fast I nearly fell. My breath came in sharp gasps. I turned to the car beside it. Another face, then another. Dozens of them. Every single vehicle now revealed someone inside, silent, unmoving, but utterly alive in their horror. I bolted. Didn't think, couldn't think. I just ran. Sneakers slapping the concrete, echoes chasing me like voices carried on the wind. I screamed for help, but the sound only bounced back at me, getting swallowed by the sheer size of the place. I started trying doors, pulling at car handles, pounding on glass. Nothing opened. No alarms. Just that awful silence and those watching eyes. Time warped after that. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. I couldn't tell. Sweat soaked my shirt and fatigue burned my legs, but still I kept running, row after row, still no exit. Instead, I found walls that shouldn't exist, bricked barriers where the garage should have opened out to the street. I don't know when the lighting grew dimmer. At some point, the steady fluorescent hum gave way to more shadows, more flickers. That's when I noticed something worse than the faces. Some of them were following me, pressed against different glass now, not where I first saw them, moving from car to car, flicking closer each time I blinked or turned away. One woman's face, grimy and hollow-eyed, appeared in a back seat as I sprinted past. 10 rows later, she was in the driver's side of another vehicle, staring at me again. Always the same expressions, mute, horrific pleading. I couldn't scream anymore. My throat burned raw. My body threatened to collapse, but still, I ran. Finally, I spotted something different, a stairwell door half open at the far end of a row. I sprinted with what energy I had left, lungs blazing, legs numb. The closer I got, the more the silence shifted. I started hearing them, the trapped ones, whispering, faint and broken, blending into one long hiss. Stay with us. I grabbed the door, yanked it wide. Beyond it wasn't stairs. It was just more parking lot, but worse. The cars were older now, ancient relics with curved frames and missing tires. Their windows weren't fogged anymore. Every face inside stared clear at me, mouths twisted, eyes dripping endless despair. Whole rows of them sat upright in their seats, all in silence, watching like an audience. I fell to my knees. The whispers rose around me, echoing without bodies. Stay. Stay. I don't remember how long I cried there, how long I curled against the filthy concrete, covering my ears while the faces stared. The buzzing lights flickered overhead, threatening total darkness. And then, as suddenly as it began, the garage was normal again. My car was there, clean, waiting. I don't even remember unlocking it. Don't remember driving home. Just blinking and realizing I was parked in my own driveway, nails bleeding from how hard I had gripped the wheel. But every night since, when I pass a parked car, I always look at the windows, always, because sometimes, just faintly, I can still see them. And I know if I stop looking, one day they'll be waiting in mine. Story 4. You know that sharp, uneasy silence after a store closes? The way the huge parking lot feels too big, too empty? That's where my nightmare began. It was late. My wife, my 2 kids, and I had just finished shopping. The lot was mostly abandoned, except for our SUV and a few scattered cars. The wind rattled a stray shopping cart across the asphalt, its metal squeal lacing the night. I remember thinking it sounded unpleasantly human. We packed the bags into the trunk. My kids giggled in the back seat, tired but hyper from a last-minute candy grab. My wife leaned in close to count bags, murmuring about forgetting the milk. That was when she froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I frowned. Hear what? Then I caught it too. A sound. Soft, uneven, like fingernails scratching metal. The slow scrape of skin against steel. It was coming from beneath the car. Before I could stop her, She crouched down and peeked under. Her hair fell into her face, one hand bracing the pavement. I held my breath, expecting something to lunge. Seconds ticked, then she exhaled, standing fast. "There's nothing there," she said, voice tight, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I stuffed the last bag in and shut the trunk hard, as if the noise meant something I didn't want to think about. Tension buzzed in my chest as we climbed inside. Engines hummed nearby, but when I turned the key, ours roared louder than normal, like it strained against something. My wife gripped my arm. The windshield showed the wide, quiet lot as I pulled forward, and then the sound came. The tires. They shrieked, not in a normal squeal of rubber, but a piercing, high-pitched cry that made me flinch and grind my teeth. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't friction. It sounded like a voice. The kids covered their ears, wincing. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. I drove farther, but the screaming grew louder, pulling raw terror into my gut. It wasn't tires. It wasn't metal. It was something alive. The sound shifted, almost like sobbing, then wailing. My wife's hands flew to her mouth. She whispered, "Oh God, it's coming from under us." I stomped the brakes. The scream stopped. For 2 seconds, all I could hear was our heavy breathing. The stillness after the noise felt worse than the noise itself. Slowly, I stepped out of the SUV, legs shaking. That was when I saw it. Blood. Thick, dark liquid spilling from the rims of all 4 tires. It dripped down the rubber, painting the clean pavement beneath us in streaks of red. I stumbled back, shaking my head, refusing to believe it. My throat wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My wife scrambled out, pulling the kids behind her. We all stared as more blood trickled, pooling under the SUV until it looked like the car itself was bleeding out. Then came the movement. Something darted from beneath the vehicle, fast, too fast to process clearly. Small, hunched, its limbs jerking wrong, like a spider forced into human motions. It vanished into the shadows between parked cars before I could see a face. But I heard it. That same piercing wail, fading as it scuttled away. My youngest clung to my leg, sobbing. My wife gripped my arm with fingers like claws, whispering through clenched teeth, "Get back inside. We need to go, now." But every instinct screamed against it. Whatever it was had been under the SUV. What if it was still inside? What if it was waiting? Still, I couldn't leave us stranded there, in that open lot, with that thing somewhere in the darkness. Summoning everything I had, I forced myself to check quickly around and under the car again. The pooling blood was already thinning into sticky black stains, like it was being swallowed by the pavement. Nothing else. Just rows of still cars, watching in their silence. I tried to be brave for my kids, but my hands trembled so bad the keys jingled as I climbed back inside. My wife ushered them in, eyes darting wildly across the shadows, like she expected something to leap through the glass any second. When I turned the ignition, the car roared normally this time. No screams, no blood. Tires rolled smooth against the pavement as if nothing had happened. And yet, I could feel it. Something shifted in the rear of the car, subtle enough the others didn't notice, but heavy enough that I did. Almost like weight pressing into the back seat. I kept my eyes locked forward, refusing to look in the rearview mirror. My kids giggled nervously again, trying to act normal. My wife clutched the dashboard, stiff as stone. We drove home in silence. But I swear, for the entire ride, I heard faint scratching from inside the wheels, echoing like a heartbeat beneath the car. Later, when everyone else was asleep, I went to check the SUV again. I had to be sure. The driveway was quiet, the night calm. The wheels were clean. No blood, no marks, just polished rubber catching the dim light. But when I crouched closer, heart pounding, I froze. Tiny handprints, too small to be human, were pressed into the inside curves of each rim. fingers curled in, like something had been crawling out. And when I listened, close enough to feel the chill against my ear, I swear I could hear the faintest sound of breathing. Waiting. Story 5. Sometimes, the longest nights are the ones that follow you home. I'd finished a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital, the kind that leaves your body heavy and your head foggy. The halls were finally quiet, machines beeping softly in the distance as I clocked out. I thought the worst of my night was behind me. I couldn't have been more wrong. The parking lot was nearly empty when I stepped out. Just rows of pale yellow lights buzzing, their glow swallowed by long shadows. My shoes clicked against the pavement, echoing louder than they should have. I hugged my coat closer around me. The air was damp, cold. That's when I saw it. A baby stroller. It was parked almost directly beside my car, just a few feet away from the driver's side door. The sight stopped me in my tracks so suddenly I almost dropped my bag. Who would leave a stroller here, in the middle of an empty hospital lot, at this hour? There wasn't a soul around. For a moment, my mind spun with anxious possibilities. Was a child inside? Was somebody in need of help? I hesitated, every instinct screaming to get into my car and lock the doors. But curiosity, or maybe duty, pulled me closer. As I edged forward, I strained to listen. And then I heard it, crying. A soft, faint wail, the unmistakable sound of an infant. It clawed at something deep inside me, that automatic human urge to respond. My hands trembled as I stepped to the stroller and leaned down to peer inside. I braced myself for a child, or maybe abandoned belongings. Instead, my stomach lurched. There was no baby. Only a small, battered recording device tucked into a blanket, its tiny speaker playing the looped sound of crying. The noise was distorted, metallic, but sickeningly real. My foot slid back instinctively, every hair on my arms standing on end. Someone had planted this, on purpose. I staggered a step away, my heart now racing. That's when I saw movement. From the corner of my eye, beneath the car parked directly next to mine, something shifted. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw it clearly. Someone crawling. A figure dragged itself slowly on all fours, emerging from beneath the frame of the neighboring car. Their arms bent at grotesque angles, joints cracking as palms slapped the pavement. Their pale face tilted upward, and I caught their eyes, milky, reflective, glowing faintly in the lot lights like those of a feral animal. They were staring directly at me. A sharp cry tore from my throat as I staggered backward. My bag slipped from my shoulder, spilling across the ground. But I couldn't look away. The figure's lips peeled back into a twisted grin, and they began dragging themselves faster, jerking forward with unnatural speed, as if their legs weren't working, but their arms more than made up for it. The stroller still wailed. The sound looped endlessly, filling the night with the cries of a baby that didn't exist. I forced myself to move. I bolted for my car, fumbling for the keys in my pocket. My hands shook so bad they slipped once, twice. My panic drowned everything out except the distinct scrape of palm and bone against pavement as the figure crept closer. Finally, I yanked the door open and dove inside, slamming the lock with trembling fingers. My breath came in ragged bursts as I shoved the key into the ignition and twisted. The engine stuttered. Once, twice. It refused to catch. The recording outside still wailed, and over it, I heard the drag, scrape, scrape, as the figure reached my side of the vehicle. Something pale slammed against the driver's side window. I screamed, jerking back against the seat. A face pressed against the glass, its features warped, its eyes wide and unblinking. The grin stretched impossibly, skin straining at the corners of its mouth. Its nails tapped at the glass as if testing its strength. Through a fog of tears and terror, I twisted the key again. This time the engine roared to life, headlights blazing. The figure flinched at the beam of light, retreating slightly. I didn't waste a second. I peeled out of the space, tires screeching against the pavement. The stroller tipped violently as I shoved past it, the crying still echoing, chasing me into the night. My heart didn't steady until I was halfway home, lungs aching, knuckles locked on the steering wheel. When I finally pulled into my driveway, headlights splashing across my garage door, I let myself exhale in relief. But when I glanced at the reflection in my rearview mirror, my blood turned to ice. The stroller was there, right behind my car. And faintly, beneath the sound of my own thundering pulse, I still heard crying. Story 6. If I could go back to that night, I wouldn't take the wrong stairwell. I'd just head home like a normal person. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and sometimes it pulls you into places you can't ever leave. It happened after a late shift. My coworker Daniel and I left the office together, heading down into the underground garage where we'd parked our cars. The place was always creepy at night, echoey, dim, smelling of dust and oil. But that night, it was worse. We pushed through the metal stairwell door, expecting to land right in the middle of level B1, but nothing looked familiar. The painted arrows and signs were gone. No bright yellow lines, no exit glows, just bare concrete walls stretching further than I'd ever seen before. Daniel frowned. This doesn't look right. We circled for several minutes, trying to find a staircase out. That's when we saw it, an old freight elevator at the far end of the row. It looked abandoned. Rust streaked the doors, and the panel beside it glowed weakly, almost like an afterthought. But when I stepped closer, I saw the buttons. Not the usual B1GL. This panel had buttons labeled B2, B3, B4, B6. Daniel squinted. That doesn't make sense. This garage only has 2 levels. And yet the buttons were there. Faint, glowing red against the age-worn panel. I can't explain why we pressed one. Curiosity, boredom, stupidity. Maybe all of it. Daniel laughed nervously and jabbed B2. The lights above us flickered, and the elevator groaned like something old being forced awake. The doors slid shut. A sour metallic smell filled the lift, stronger the further we sank. When it finally stopped, the doors opened with a sigh. And what we saw wasn't our garage. It was a parking lot, but massive, endless rows vanishing into the distance. The overhead lamps buzzed dimly, casting long shadows across cracked pavement. The air felt thick, like we had stepped underground into somewhere not meant for people. Cars filled every row, hundreds of them, but all of them looked wrong. Dust covered windshields like heavy gray blankets. Paint peeled in jagged strips. Tires sagged like rotting flesh. A few had shattered windows. These were decades old, but all perfectly placed, as if carefully parked and abandoned. Daniel whispered, "What the hell is this place?" His voice bounced strange, echoing longer than it should. I whispered back, though I didn't know why. "Let's find an exit. There's got to be stairs somewhere." We walked down a row, then another. The silence pressed harder with every step. Our shoes scuffed against gravel and dirt, but the cars themselves were dead still, watching us like silent witnesses. That's when I noticed the first one. I glanced through a fogged window and my stomach dropped. Inside the driver's seat sat a person, head slumped to the side, face pale and unmoving. Their skin was sunken, gray. I stepped closer, but no breath fogged the glass. They didn't blink, didn't stir. I turned away fast, heart hammering. And then I realized every car had someone inside. A woman with one hand pressed against the glass, eyes wide open but glazed with an empty stare. A man in a back seat, mouth frozen as though mid-scream. Children in one van all lined up, eyes locked forward in silence, row after row, seat after seat. All of them filled. Not moving, not speaking, just waiting. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. "Daniel," I whispered. "We need to go. Now." But Daniel, He leaned closer to one of the windshields, wiping the dust aside with his sleeve. "Are they alive?" The figure inside jerked, just a twitch, but enough that Daniel stumbled back with a curse. We started running then. Our footsteps pounded in rhythm, the dust rising around us. But no matter how far we went, we saw no exit. Just more cars, more faces. I swear some of them started changing position. A man slumped in one car was suddenly pressed against the glass when we passed again. A woman's empty eyes followed us down the row. "Over there!" Daniel gasped, pointing. We saw light, another elevator at the far end, its doors hanging open like a mouth ready to swallow us. We sprinted, lungs burning, desperation propelling us forward. But halfway there, I heard it. The shuffle of doors unlocking, the groan of engines that hadn't run for decades, and behind us, the faint sound of hands presses against glass, hundreds of palms sliding down windows all at once. We didn't look back. We couldn't. We dove for the elevator and slammed every button, praying one would close the doors. At first, nothing happened. The light flickered above. Then, slowly, the doors sealed shut. Darkness swallowed us. The elevator groaned, then lurched upward. We waited in silence, both of us shaking, sweat dripping cold down our spines. When the doors opened, we were back in our garage. The normal, half-lit rows of cars, the painted lines, the exits shining bright and welcoming. It was all normal, perfectly normal. But Daniel didn't park there anymore. He refuses to. Says he sold his car, takes the train now, and me? I still drive, still park in that garage. But every time I pass an old car on the way home, I feel it. A pull. Because sometimes, when I glance too quickly at a dirty window, I catch eyes looking back. Not blinking, just waiting. And I can't shake the feeling that one day, those doors will open again, and I won't be lucky enough to escape. For more stories like this, share and subscribe Goofy Horror.